My name is Nicole. I'm 32 years old and live in a small town about a 50-minute drive from Boston. Every morning, I make myself a cup of espresso, listen to the weather report, then walk to my office just over a block away from home. I'm the co-founder of a biotech startup in the healthcare field. A job that's not easy to explain, especially to people who think office work just means data entry all day. My family never understood what I do, or maybe they never really cared to. To them, I've always been the weird younger sister, the one who dressed simply, never wore much makeup, and was always glued to her laptop or in some meeting. Claire, my older sister, is the one they're proud of. She's 3 years older than me and has always been the perfect daughter in their eyes. Beautiful, graceful, soft-spoken, and charming. Even in family photos, I was just a faint shadow behind Claire's spotlight. On Thanksgiving or Christmas, relatives would gather around her with praise. "Claire, you look stunning in that dress." Or, "Claire, your new boyfriend's a doctor. Impressive." And me? If anyone even remembered I existed, the line was always, "Nicole, yeah, she's doing something in biotech, I think." They spoke as if I were a footnote at the bottom of the page. I used to think if I worked hard enough, if I stayed behind the scenes and carried the load, then one day my parents would finally see me and be proud just like they were of Claire. But no, all the attention, all the expectations, all the compliments, they were always hers. And me? I was always distant, dry, hard to talk to. They never knew I'd stayed at the office until midnight handling a crisis for a public health project worth nearly $2 million, 0 cents. They never asked how it felt to build a company from scratch with 3 college friends. When people ask about my family, I just give a faint smile and say, "We haven't spoken in a while. It's nothing." Not because I'm hiding something, just because there's nothing left to say. We haven't talked in over 2 years. No texts, no calls, no birthday wishes. Just silence, like a broken line nobody bothered to reconnect. I used to believe family was the place you could always return to. But one day, on my mother's birthday, that belief shattered. It was late March. I had just closed a successful funding round with an investment firm from New York. I planned to take 3 days off and fly back early to help my parents prep for Mom's birthday, like I always did. Nothing fancy. I just wanted to help out, like always. When I called to let them know, it was my dad who picked up. "I'm planning to come back early. Let me know if there's anything you need me to pick up or prepare," I said. I still remember his voice. Not angry, just strange. A short pause, then he cleared his throat. "Nicole, if possible, don't come home this year." I froze for a second, thinking maybe he was worried I was too busy with work. "It's okay, Dad. I've already cleared my schedule. I really want to be there." This time, his voice was firm. "Claire is bringing her new boyfriend. He's a CFO. Well-spoken, clearly successful. Your job? Well, it's hard to explain. You showing up would just invite comparisons and make things awkward. So, it's best you stay." I went numb. My chest tightened, a cold sting crawling down my spine. I gripped the phone and said through clenched teeth, "Are you saying I make the family look bad? That I shouldn't come home because I'm an embarrassment?" He didn't take it back. In fact, he doubled down. "If you insist on coming, then don't call me your father." Then he hung up. No hesitation, no second thoughts. My apartment went eerily quiet. The espresso cup in my hand had gone cold. I stared into the empty air like the world had cracked open with a single sentence. I didn't cry. I just sat there. And for the first time in my life, I realized something. I was no longer part of the family I had tried so hard to hold together. I sat there in my familiar armchair by the window, early spring sunlight pouring through the white curtains. unable to warm the chill inside me. My father's words echoed again, clear and final. "If you insist on coming, then don't call me your father." I looked down at my hands. My fingers trembled, not from anger but from something deeper, the breaking point. I had always thought that even if I'd never be loved like Claire, at least I was still their daughter. Turns out, I wasn't. I stood up and walked to my desk. Without hesitation, I opened my laptop and logged into my banking app. For over 2 years, I'd been sending money to my parents every month, covering their electric bill, water, internet, even cable. Nearly $600, 0 cents a month, not counting the extra I'd send when Mom said the fridge broke down or Dad's car needed work. They never asked if I could afford it. They just said, "Claire's struggling after switching jobs. If you can help, that'd be great." And I helped, quietly, as if it were my duty. As if responsibility were some invisible contract I'd signed the moment I started earning. I opened the transaction history and scrolled. The total popped up. $15,720, 0 cents. My heart sank, not because I regretted it, but because even after all of that, I was never enough. I hovered over each bill, electric, water, internet. Click. Then another. Notifications popped up. Auto payment canceled successfully. No alarms, no warnings, just silence. Just like how I'd always existed in my family. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was angry, but because I kept thinking about how everything unfolded. About what my father said. About how my entire family was willing to cast me aside just to impress Claire's new boyfriend, a man I hadn't even met. I'd been compared all my life, but this was the first time I was publicly rejected. As if my existence was an inconvenience. Mom's birthday came quickly. I didn't call. I didn't send a card. I didn't post anything online, not out of spite, but because I couldn't pretend anymore. At exactly 5 p.m., as I sat on my balcony sipping peppermint tea, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then let it go dark. A message came in right after. "Nicole, why is the power out? Can you check for us?" I set down my tea and opened the next message from Dad. "No water, no internet, call the providers, your mom's freaking out." I sat in silence, eyes fixed on the tree line out back. No anger, no pain, just an eerie calm. They didn't ask, "Are you okay?" Not a word about the phone call. They just wanted me to do what I'd always done, clean up the mess. Then came a text from Claire. "The internet's down, guests are coming, and Mom is almost in tears. What's going on?" I picked up my phone and typed. 3 weeks ago, Dad told me if I insisted on coming home, I shouldn't call him my father. I'm just doing what he asked. If this is inconvenient, maybe find someone you're not ashamed to introduce. I didn't send it. I deleted it. Not because I regretted it, but because I knew no matter what I said, they'd only hear what suited them. I set the phone down, leaned back in my chair, and closed my eyes. My little apartment was still and quiet. No complaints, no judgmental looks, no demands. The next day, Claire left a voicemail. "Mom's been crying since last night. Do you know how important yesterday was? My boyfriend met the family for the first time, and everything got ruined. You're so selfish." I listened to the whole message, then turned off my phone. For years, I hadn't been selfish enough. Now it was time. I opened my work email and checked the weekend operations report. One subject line stood out. "New Jersey staff transfer to Boston, awaiting approval." I opened the attached list, skimmed through the names, and then I stopped. Liam Prescott. That name made my heart skip a beat. I remembered it. because just 3 days ago, my mother had mentioned it. Claire's boyfriend, Liam, works at a major corporation. I squinted at the file. Current position, head of finance, New Jersey branch, transferring to Boston HQ. Approver, Nicole Warren, co-founder. I let out a small laugh. Just a reflex. The world was smaller than I thought, and I knew what was coming had only just begun. I sat still in front of my laptop, hand resting on the mouse, my chest hollow, as if someone had taken a piece of my memory I'd clung to for too long. Nearly $16,000, 0 cents. Every cent of it paid by me, month after month, without reminders, without delays. And yet, not once had they said, "Thank you." Not once. I scrolled back through the payment list, the same lines repeating. $192.48, my electricity. $136.72, my water. $248.50, my internet and cable. Month after month, like I was their unpaid family accountant. Unseen, unacknowledged, forgotten. I remembered the last phone call with my mom about a year ago when she called around midnight just to say, "Nicole, the bathroom pipe burst. Can you call someone? Claire's on vacation with her boyfriend. You're the only one left." You're the only one left. It sounded harmless, but it was a bitter truth. I wasn't loved like a daughter. I was just the solution when the ones they truly cared about didn't show up. And now, being told not to come home because my presence didn't look good, I finally understood. All these years, nothing I did was ever received with love. I was only remembered when a bill needed paying or a problem needed fixing, but when I needed something, no one was there. My phone lit up again, a message from my mom. "Nicole, I know yesterday got a little tense, but if you could take care of the internet bill, that would be great. Claire is trying to keep things calm with the guests." I stared at the message like an outsider. No apology, no mention of the cruel rejection from my father. Just another request, like always. I set the phone down without replying. I stepped outside onto the porch, sitting in the wooden chair under the fading April sun. Boston wasn't warm yet, but the crisp air somehow made me feel clearer. I thought about Liam, Claire's new boyfriend, and now my incoming employee. The irony. My family excluded me from Mom's birthday because of him, while he was about to report directly to me. If life were a comedy, this would be its finest punchline. I returned to my desk and opened the email. The subject line stood out. New hire confirmation, Liam Prescott, transfer to Boston office. I clicked on the profile. Everything matched. Age, experience, degrees. A polished resume. Exactly the kind Claire would go for. Educated, established, charming on paper. I looked at the attached photo. Something familiar. Then I remembered. We'd briefly met at a conference about 6 months ago. He shook my hand and politely called me co-founder Warren, but neither of us made the connection. Or rather, I never cared enough about Claire to know who the man beside her was. Now I had a choice. Approve the transfer, or deny it. But I knew I didn't need to do anything. Life had already written the perfect script. I just needed to sit back and see what would happen when Claire found out her boyfriend reported to the sister who embarrassed the family. The next day, Liam arrived at the office. He stepped into mine with a folder, his face slightly tense. When I looked up, his eyes paused on me, then widened in shock. "Nicole?" he asked softly. I smiled faintly, calm and composed. "Welcome to Pacific Genomics. I'll be reviewing the entire financial plan for this quarter. I look forward to working with you." Liam froze. His face flushed, then turned pale. No one in my family knew I co-founded this company. No one had ever asked what I really did. They just assumed I was some low-level desk worker. I said nothing more, just slid the contract toward him. Liam took it and quietly left the room. I leaned back in my chair. I wasn't happy. I wasn't sad. I just felt like the wheel had finally turned. And this time, I didn't have to say a word. The truth had spoken for itself. The morning of my mother's birthday, the Boston sky was unusually gray. A thick fog hung in the air, making everything look blurred, like the world itself was bracing for something to unravel. I poured myself a strong black coffee, sat by the window, and stared at the empty yard. I didn't plan to do anything. No texts, no calls, no birthday post. I just wanted things to play out exactly as they were, without me. At 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. First message from Mom. "Nicole, sweetheart, I think the power's out. Can you check for us? It's an important day." I placed the phone face down on the table. Same tone. Sweet, gentle, like nothing had ever happened. Like I hadn't been told by my father that I embarrassed the family and shouldn't show up. 15 minutes later, a second message. This time from Dad. "Still no power. Water's not running either. Is something wrong with the payments? Call the provider now." Short, cold, no concern, no mention of me being excluded from the party. Just a command, like I was still their logistics manager. I sighed. For 2 years, I'd never missed a single payment. Electricity, water, internet cable. I canceled them all, one by one, the night my father hung up, and severed everything, because I was hard to introduce. And now, on the very day Claire was introducing her boyfriend to the family, the house was in chaos. No electricity, no water, no internet. Exactly as expected. By 11 a.m., the messages came flooding in. "Mom, Nicole, please, I'm begging you. Guests are arriving. Can you just help this once?" Dad, "No electricity. We can't cook. Where are you? Take care of this now." Claire, "Seriously, Nicole, today is special. Mom's about to cry. There's no internet. I can't call anyone. I'm losing it here. Can you stop being selfish?" I leaned back. My coffee had gone cold. The texts didn't make me feel vindicated. They didn't satisfy me. All I felt was emptiness. A quiet, unwavering emptiness. Then the phone buzzed again. A video call from Aunt Sharon, the only person in the family who still sent holiday messages, even if I rarely responded. I hesitated, then answered. Her old kitchen came into view, lit only by a phone flashlight. She looked tired, eyes slightly red. "Nicole," she said softly. "Your mom's in a panic. The house is dark, everyone's running around, and no one knows what to do." I said nothing, just looked at her. She paused, then added, not accusing, not defending. "What happened? You've never missed your mom's birthday. I know you have your reasons, but say something." I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "My dad said I made the family look bad. Told me if I insisted on coming, I shouldn't call him my father anymore. What do you think I should do after that?" Aunt Sharon froze. Her face changed in an instant. In the background, I heard noise. My mother saying loudly, "She's probably just sulking. No one would be heartless enough to do this." Then a sharper voice. "Claire, Liam's almost here. Someone call the power company already. I can't believe she did this to us today." I gave a slight, joyless smile. Aunt Sharon heard everything. She didn't defend anyone. Didn't say a word. And then, unexpectedly, the screen shifted. A new face entered the frame. Liam. Same neat suit, same polished expression as in his resume. He stared at the screen and blurted out, almost involuntarily, "Nicole?" Everyone went silent. You're Nicole Warren, the one who runs Pacific Genomics? I nodded, eyes steady. A long pause. Then Liam turned to everyone in the room. She's my direct superior. And the one who approved my transfer to Boston. Stunned silence. Claire's jaw dropped. My parents froze. No one said a word. I calmly replied, "Hope your introduction today goes well." Then I ended the call. After the call, I set my phone down without another word. Outside the window, the dim afternoon light filtered weakly through the thick gray clouds. Everything around me was so quiet, it barely felt real. No voices, no follow-up texts, no calls. Just me and a strange, weightless sense of relief after a truth revealed not by me, but by them. I didn't need to expose anyone. I just stayed silent and let everything unfold exactly as it was meant to. Liam had confirmed it clearly. I was his superior, the co-founder of Pacific Genomics, the company they assumed I was just some desk worker for. In that moment, my family's kitchen became a stage where the masks fell, one by one, and no one could stop them. And Claire, my sister, the one who once whispered to Mom that Nicole should pick a job that's easier to introduce, now stood frozen beside a birthday cake that hadn't even been lit. She had tried so hard to impress her boyfriend with empty compliments and a picture-perfect family, but in the end, it was that very boyfriend who called me boss in front of everyone. I could picture the scene like I was watching a replay. My mother, so flustered she nearly dropped the cake tray. My father, red-faced, gripping the edge of the table. And the relatives, those who only showed up for food and judgment, sitting in stunned silence, eyes darting around as they tried to process what just happened. And Aunt Sharon still had the call going, her gaze no longer curious, but something closer to respect. She didn't say much, just gave me a small nod before ending the call. That evening, I got the first message from Claire. Long, messy, a mix of anger and desperation. "You knew all along, didn't you? You let it happen right during the party? Mom's been crying all night. Liam doesn't even know how to react. Don't you think that was cruel, Nicole?" I watched the message pop up on my screen, but didn't open it right away. I made a cup of ginger tea and sat on the couch, letting the steam ease the tightness in my throat. I didn't feel joy, but I didn't feel guilty either. After about 10 minutes, I finally hit reply. Just a few lines, no need for more. "You say I was cruel? I was just at home. I didn't start the video call. I didn't call myself his boss. I didn't do anything. And if a single truth was enough to ruin the whole party, maybe that party was never built on anything solid in the first place." I hit send. I wasn't waiting for a reply. Half an hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mom. The message was short. "I never expected you to choose this way to get back at the family." I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair. Get back? Is that what they thought this was? I just remembered being shut out of a family event, having my role as a daughter dismissed because my job wasn't impressive enough. I remembered quietly paying dozens of bills over 2 years without a single check-in. I remembered trying so hard to be accepted, to be loved, and now I was done trying. Around 10 p.m., I got an email from Liam. "Nicole, I'm sorry I didn't know sooner. I truly respect you for your work and for the way you stayed silent today. I've never felt more ashamed, but not because of you." I read it, then replied slowly. "Liam, you don't need to apologize. Everyone is responsible for how they choose to see others. And don't worry, I never bring family matters into work, but I hope you understand now. Sometimes silence is the greatest strength." I clicked send, turned off my screen, and placed the phone face down on the table. Tomorrow, I'd still go to the office like usual. There would be reports to review, meetings to prepare for, and a world still turning outside. Only now there was one difference. Starting today, the ones who once dismissed me, finally knew who I was. And without a single shout, without any accusations, I had made them go silent. The next morning, as I walked into my office, sunlight filtered through the glass panels, casting a warm golden glow across the room. The air was calm, as if the universe had given me a few quiet minutes to breathe before the day's noise returned. I sat at my desk, powered on my computer, and opened my email as usual. In the priority inbox, there was one unread message. Sender. Liam Prescott. I clicked it. Subject. Apology. And goodbye. Nicole. I don't know where to start, but after last night I couldn't sleep. I've been thinking. What happened probably shouldn't have happened in front of so many people, but at the same time, I feel a strange sense of clarity, especially about you. I'm not ashamed that you're Claire's sister. I'm ashamed that I didn't see her true self sooner. I can't stay in a relationship where basic respect doesn't exist. As of today, I'm ending things with Claire. Thank you for staying silent yesterday. And thank you for the way you lead. Quiet but strong and fair. Liam. I read it twice, then leaned back in my chair. I wasn't happy that Claire got dumped. I just felt something. Right. Like for the first time, someone outside finally saw what I'd been living with for years. The things I was told I was too sensitive about, or too cold for staying quiet about. I didn't reply. There was no need. But about 2 hours later, as I was reviewing the financial summary from the finance team, my phone lit up. A message from Claire. Nicole, I know you're busy, but please, can you talk to Liam for me? He's misunderstanding everything. I looked at the message, calm and unmoved. I didn't reply right away. Less than 5 minutes later, another message came through. You're his boss. You have influence. If you say something, he'll reconsider. I stood up and walked over to the window, gazing down at the busy street below. All those years, I had wished for just one message from Claire checking in when I was hurting, one word of encouragement when I failed. But there was nothing. And now that her relationship had crumbled, the person she turned to was me. Not to apologize, but to fix it. I returned to my desk and typed, Liam didn't leave because of anything I said. He left because of who you are. And maybe for the first time he really saw it. Claire didn't reply immediately, but about an hour later a new message arrived. You're right. But I really don't want to lose him. I'll change this time, please. Just this once. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, but because I was past the point of explaining. When I left the office that evening, the early spring breeze was still chilly, but the sunset cast a deep orange glow across the rooftops. I walked to the parking lot slowly, without hurry, without worry. Maybe for the first time in years, I felt light. I hadn't sought revenge. I had simply lived my truth, and let the rest reveal itself. Claire had brought this ending on herself, and Liam, once dazzled by the facade of a perfect family, had finally seen the foundation beneath, the one I had lived on most of my life. That night, I played an old playlist, the kind of music that used to make me feel invisible during my early startup days. But tonight, the melodies sounded like a quiet affirmation. I had stepped out of the shadows. Not by yelling, but by standing firm. And that's what Claire, or anyone else in my family, had never seen coming. I didn't need validation anymore. I just needed to be myself, and live what I truly deserve. About a week after things calmed down, on a rare Sunday afternoon when I decided not to touch my laptop, The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I almost ignored it. But something made me glance through the peephole. My parents were standing at the gate. I stood still for a few seconds, letting my mind catch up with what I was seeing. My mom held a small bag, her face tired. My dad had his arms crossed, his eyes less stern than during our last call, but still carrying that usual hardness. I opened the door. Said nothing. "Hi, honey," my mom said first, her voice raspy like she'd just gotten off a long flight. "Can we come in and talk for a bit?" I silently stepped aside to let them in. No hugs, no warm greetings, just a heavy silence stretching from the hallway to the living room. I poured some water, set down 2 glasses, and sat across from them. My mom glanced around the apartment. Simple, tidy, and completely untouched by any presence of my parents. My dad spoke first. "About your mom's birthday, I said some things I shouldn't have." I stayed quiet. He looked at me, then continued, slower this time. "Maybe we've been a little hard on you. Claire's been a mess since the breakup, and your mom's been crying nonstop, so we wanted to sit down and talk like a family." I still said nothing, just nodded slightly. I wanted to see where they were going with this. I was used to the long build-up before they got to what they really came for. Just as I expected, my mom jumped in right after. "Well, we actually have a proposal." She hesitated, then placed the bag on the table and pulled out a printed sheet. "We've thought it through. You're stable now, your job is great. If possible, we're hoping you could help us with a monthly contribution, around $2,000, 0 cents. Just enough to cover living costs, insurance, and some retirement savings." I looked up at her. $2,000 a month? My dad jumped in, as if afraid I'd misunderstand. "It's not much for someone in your position. We're family, Nicole." I sat up straighter and kept my tone steady. "What about Claire?" My mom hesitated. "She's not doing well after the breakup. She's down. Work's not going great. We can't pressure her." I let out a soft laugh, not out of bitterness, just because it was all so familiar. Claire was always the one who couldn't be pressured, and I was always the one who could handle it. I looked directly at them. "If Claire agrees to contribute her part, $1,000, 0 cents a month, I'll cover the other half. If not, I'll need a legal contract, one that clearly states when you both pass, all assets, including the house, will belong to me." Silence filled the room. My father furrowed his brow, his face flushing red. "Are you seriously giving your own parents conditions?" I didn't blink. "Not conditions, principles. I already spent nearly $16,000, 0 cents, on this family over 2 years without anyone ever acknowledging it. If you want me to continue, then things need to be clear." My mother turned to my father, her voice starting to waver. "Maybe we should talk it over?" But he shot up from his seat, slamming his hand against the wooden table, making the glasses rattle. "We raised her for over 20 years, and now, when we ask for a little help, she demands a contract? Unbelievable." I stayed seated, my eyes locked on him. "Dad, I don't owe you. If you think raising me was some kind of investment that needs a return, we can calculate it, line by line. But I won't pay for it with silence anymore." He looked like he wanted to argue, but froze, lips pressed tight. My mother stood up and gently tugged at his arm. "Let's go." I stood too, walking them to the door. No hugs, no goodbyes. When the door closed behind them, all that remained was the soft breeze drifting in from the balcony. In that stillness, I knew another chapter had ended, and this time I was the one who wrote the final line. After that day, my parents never reached out again. No calls, no messages. No accusations, not even an apology for the outburst that had hit my home like a storm. As if every disappointment in their lives had been caused by their difficult daughter. But I wasn't surprised. I'd grown used to that kind of silence, the kind that didn't come from shame or remorse, but simply from people who don't know how to speak when they're no longer in control. I kept living my life. Quiet mornings with coffee, strategic meetings that ran late into the evening, signing deals with partners who once doubted a young woman could run a biotech company. And through it all, I stopped feeling guilty. I stopped thinking I was wrong for saying no to being the backup wallet, the default caretaker, just because I could handle it. Because eventually you have to understand, love can't be measured in monthly payments, and it can't be forced through a sense of duty. If affection only exists as long as the bills are paid, then it's not family. It's a transaction. I started cutting the invisible strings that tied me to the roles they had assigned me. I no longer used a family photo as my phone wallpaper. I didn't remember Claire's birthday. I didn't mark the holidays to send a little something. I no longer hovered over guilt-ridden messages. I learned to put the period myself, instead of waiting for them to start with an apology. One day, during a team meeting, Liam, now officially our company's head of finance, walked in with an investment report. He worked with focus, professionalism, and always kept a respectful distance. We never talked about Claire, not once, and I appreciated that. Some things, when fully understood, are best left unspoken. That afternoon, as I left the office, it was drizzling. I stopped by a familiar cafe, choosing a seat by the window. On the wall was a carved wooden sign. Home is not always a place. Sometimes, it's a choice. I sat there, sipping a hot latte, reflecting on the path I'd taken. There was a time when I believed that if I just stayed quiet, gentle, and responsible enough, I would eventually be accepted. But the truth is, if you let people get used to disrespecting you, they'll start seeing your sacrifices as obligations, and your silence as agreement. I chose to stand up, not to go against my family, but to protect myself. I chose to set boundaries, not because I'm selfish, but because I finally understood. Self-worth can't be defined by someone else's pity or sudden needs. And if someone were to ask me, Nicole, do you regret not helping your parents when they needed you? My answer would be, I regret that it took me so long to realize I deserved more than that. Because real family is where you're seen as a whole person, not a wallet, not a stand-in, not the fallback plan for people who always put you last. I know my story might be hard for some people to accept. In our society, refusing family duty is often seen as ungrateful. But try stepping into my shoes. The daughter who was shut out for not being polished enough to introduce. The one who paid tens of thousands in silence and never once heard, "Are you okay?" I didn't choose family in the traditional sense. I chose myself. What about you? Do you think I was too cold? Or did I finally learn how to love myself at the right time? Share your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes your story might be the light someone else needs when they're struggling between duty and freedom. And if you've ever felt alone in your own family, believe me, you're not. Nicole's story is a powerful reminder that no one is obligated to sacrifice themselves for a relationship that only carries the label family but lacks respect. When you learn to set boundaries, choose self-love, and stop letting your kindness be taken for granted, that's not selfishness. That's growth. Nicole didn't seek revenge. She chose dignified silence to reaffirm her worth. And sometimes the firmest action is the very first step to real peace. What do you think of Nicole's choice? Was she too harsh? Or was she simply protecting herself after years of being hurt? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more deep and meaningful stories about family. My name is Mary, and this is the story of the day I realized I had never truly belonged in my own family. I came to my sister's wedding, Ellie's, with a simple intention: to celebrate, smile for a few photos, and play the role of the kind older sister like I always had. The wedding was held at a lakeside resort in Vermont, known for its flower-filled gardens and lavish banquet halls with soaring glass ceilings. As soon as my car stopped at the main gate, a staff member in a black suit stepped out to open the door. I took a deep breath, smoothed the wine-colored dress, the only one I felt suited the fancy event, and smiled as I walked in. I wasn't trying to draw attention or make the day about me. This was Ellie's day, and I had long accepted that I wasn't the favored child. But what I didn't expect was just how cold they could be. As soon as I stepped into the main hall, a receptionist greeted me with a dazzling smile. "Your name?" "Mary Evans," I said softly. Her smile faltered for a moment. I saw the hesitation on her perfectly made-up face. Her hand flipped through the list a little faster than usual, then stopped. Her eyes narrowed slightly before she looked up. "Ah, here it is. You're placed in the hallway area." I blinked. "Sorry, where?" "Just outside the banquet hall near the coat check area," she said, trying to sound casual. I glanced at the seating chart beside us. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Evans, were seated at the head table. Ellie's close friends and her husband's co-workers all had spots inside, under the sparkling chandeliers. And me? I didn't see my name anywhere. "Maybe there's been a mistake," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. She smiled again, this time more awkwardly. "I'm afraid not. This is the assigned spot." My chest burned. I told myself maybe the hall had run out of space. Maybe it was a last-minute error. But then I saw my mother, standing next to Ellie, adjusting the veil on her wedding dress. They were laughing, clinging to each other as if nothing at all was wrong. I walked over and kept my voice steady. "Mom, can I talk to you for a second?" My mother, Caroline, didn't even look at me. "Not now, Mary. Can't you see we're busy?" I bit my lip. "Just a minute." She groaned, clearly annoyed, but stepped aside. Ellie remained still, her eyes locked on me with a smile that could hardly be called warm. "I've been seated. In the hallway," I said. My mother shrugged, as if that was hardly worth mentioning. "We had to prioritize close family, you know that." I clenched my fists. "I am close family." She let out a soft, icy laugh. "Oh, don't make a big deal out of this, Mary." Ellie chimed in, eyes glinting with satisfaction. "I'm sure it was just a mix-up. Nobody meant anything by it. Weddings are hectic." Her voice was sugary sweet, but her look was anything but. I turned to my mother again, hoping for even a flicker of hesitation, but she just sighed. "Don't ruin your sister's big day, Mary. You should be grateful you were invited." The word grateful stuck in my throat like a stone. Grateful to be treated like an outsider in my own family? Grateful to be seated next to the coat rack? Before I could respond, my father, Charles, walked up, his voice low, like he just wanted the moment to pass. "It's just a seat, sweetheart. Don't make it a thing." I stood still. The anger was there, simmering, quiet, not explosive, just something deeper, colder. I smiled, an empty one, and turned away without another word. They thought I'd silently take it, like always, but this time, I wouldn't. I walked slowly out of the main hall, my heels clicking lightly against the cold marble floor. The air in the hallway smelled of silk, wedding flowers, and something else. Something out of place, like me. In my hand was the place card with my name. Mary Evans, Table H, Hallway Area. The elegant cursive felt like a slap in the face. I turned the card in my fingers, my palm damp. I had hoped, just this once, that my family would see me, as one of them. But clearly, they never had. A soft click came from behind. The door to the hall opened. "Mary," Ellie's voice called, light like a greeting, but enough to stop me. I turned. She stood there, arms crossed, her veil fluttering in the cool air, her makeup flawless, her smile anything but kind. "Are you upset?" she asked, with no real concern. "Because of the seating?" I gave a dry laugh. "I'm not upset. I'm disappointed." Ellie tilted her head, her eyes lighting up like she'd just heard something funny. "You're always so sensitive. It's just a seat, Mary. Who even cares?" I bit the inside of my cheek, keeping my voice steady. "You know it's not about the seat. It's about how this family treats me. It's always been that way." She shrugged. "So what? You still showed up, still wore the pretty dress, still hoped for attention." She stepped closer, her voice dropping so only I could hear. "You're desperate for their approval. It's sad." I looked her straight in the eyes. "No, Ellie. What's sad is that you need to tear someone down, just to feel loved." That made her pause for a second, but then, as if it meant nothing, Ellie laughed. "You really know how to kill the mood, like always." Footsteps approached behind her. It was Mom. Caroline, with a tense expression, like she'd been dragged away from the party to handle something trivial. "I heard there's some drama out here," she asked, eyes on Ellie, barely glancing at me. I took a breath, telling myself I deserved an explanation. "Mom, I was seated in the hallway. I'm not some acquaintance or a distant guest. I'm your daughter." She furrowed her brow, then gave a tight smile. "Mary, it's not that I don't value you. It's just, there were limited seats inside. I had to prioritize people who are closer." I stood still. "What did you just say?" "Closer to Ellie," she said quickly. "Aunt Patty, her best friend from college, the people who were there when she was sick. You've always been independent. I never had to worry about you." I let out a laugh, so soft it surprised even me. "You never had to worry about me, and you think that justifies treating me like I don't exist?" Ellie jumped in, her voice syrupy. "Mary, stop it. Mom didn't mean it like that. You're overreacting. You should be grateful you were even invited." That line cut deep. I turned to Mom, looking at her like I was seeing her for the first time. "Do you even realize how grateful sounds when you've made me feel like a stranger in my own family?" She said nothing. No touch, no hug, no apology. A deep voice came from my left. "It's just a seat, Mary." It was my father, Gregory. He stood there with a glass in his hand, eyes fixed on the floor. Still the same avoidance, like always. I turned to him, speaking slowly. "I don't need you to defend me, but the least you could do is look me in the eye when you speak." He looked up, confusion flickering briefly before fading. Ellie shrugged, like I was a stubborn child ruining the adults' party. "If you're that unhappy, you can just leave." I looked at the three of them, these people I once called family, and suddenly realized maybe Ellie was right. I tightened my grip on my purse and took a deep breath. Something inside me cracked, not from weakness, but from clarity. If they had decided I didn't belong, then I wouldn't try anymore. And what was about to happen would make sure they never forgot this night. I walked quickly down the thick carpeted hall, my heels swallowed by the plush silence. Behind me, the music in the banquet hall played on cheerfully, laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. But it all sounded like it came from another world, a world I was never really invited into. I stopped at a quiet corner, clutching my purse strap like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. Ellie's smirk, Mom's dismissive shake of the head, Dad's distant silence. All of it swirled in my mind like a broken melody. And then, A memory returned, sharp and clear like it happened yesterday. 3 years ago, I went home for Thanksgiving, the rare occasion when Ellie wasn't around, off traveling with a new boyfriend in Portugal. The house in Albany felt strangely calm. No loud chatter, no trace of Ellie's overpowering perfume lingering in the air. Mom asked me to go to my old room to find some family photos for a memory album. I nodded, a little relieved to do something that felt meaningful, or at least included. My room hadn't changed after all those years. The small bed by the window, the old bookshelf, and the high school photos, mostly of me, alone. I rummaged through the drawer and found the photo box, but then my eyes accidentally landed on the small drawer of my mother's vanity. I didn't know why, but I opened it. Inside lay a light brown leather notebook, resting silently. Every page was filled with my mother's handwriting, crowned, careful letters. I flipped it open, not thinking much, until I read the first lines. The first day Ellie went to kindergarten, she didn't cry. She turned around, waved goodbye to me, and ran into class like a brave little doll. I turned the page. Ellie loves the baked pasta I make on Thursday nights. Ellie used to be scared of thunder, but now she's much braver. Ellie's favorite birthday gift was the little nurse outfit I got her when she turned 8. Page after page, year after year, it was Ellie. Always Ellie. Memories recorded like a private memoir just for her. I began searching, like I was trying to prove to myself that I too had once been remembered. I flipped each page, scanned every line, but there was nothing. Not a sentence, not a line, not even the name, Mary. I clutched the notebook so tightly my knuckles turned white. When Mom walked in, I was still sitting motionless on the floor, the notebook wide open in my hands. "You wrote all of this about Ellie?" I asked, my voice small but cold. She glanced at the notebook and smiled, light as if it meant nothing. "I had to remember everything so Ellie wouldn't feel forgotten. She's sensitive." I bit my lip until it bled. "And what about me?" Mom looked at me, her eyes unwavering. "You've always been independent. You didn't need to be written about to be remembered." I nodded, saying nothing more, but something inside me shattered in that moment. A part of my childhood, a part of my hope, and the part of me that longed for my mother's recognition. That memory came back so vividly in the luxurious hallway of today's wedding. Nothing had changed. I was still Mary, the daughter my mother never thought to include in her memory book, and didn't think needed a decent seat at her sister's wedding. A chill ran down my spine, not from the air conditioning, but from the clarity. I sank onto the bench by the window, right next to the coat rack, exactly where they'd planned for me to be. I looked at the name card in my hand, printed in gold script, then at my own faint reflection in the glass. Behind me, the wedding went on. Glimmering lights, white flowers, Ellie's dazzling smile, and her expensive dress. But I sat here, on the edge of memory, space, and affection. If this was where they thought I belonged, maybe they'd never truly known me at all. And for the first time, I didn't feel sad about that. I just felt like I was finally stepping out of the shadows they'd cast over me for so many years, and I was ready to face all of it. I stayed still on that bench by the glass, my heart tangled between memories and the present. Everything that had just happened, the way Ellie mocked me, how Mom brushed off my feelings like they didn't matter, kept playing over and over in my head like a loop with no end. "Mary," a low male voice startled me. I looked up. Standing in front of me was Ethan Bennett, the groom of the day. He wore a tailored tux, his tie slightly loosened, his dark brown hair tousled as if he'd run his hands through it from stress. In his hand was a champagne flute, untouched. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and nodded slightly. "Ethan." He looked at me, eyes narrowing slightly like he was trying to figure something out. Seeing you sitting here doesn't feel like you. I let out a soft laugh. Really? Because your family decided I'm not worthy of a seat in the main hall? He said nothing. A heavy silence settled between two people who barely knew each other, yet were sharing a strangely intimate moment. Mary? Ethan finally said, his voice lower. Can I ask you something? I met his gaze. Go ahead. He hesitated, his hand tightening slightly around the stem of the glass. Has Ellie ever said anything about me that seemed off to you? I tilted my head. Are you asking if I've heard her badmouth you? Not just that. He pulled his phone from his inner jacket pocket, looked down at the screen, then shook his head. It's just, lately she's been different, controlling, secretive. There are things she doesn't want me to know, and I'm starting to realize something's not right. I paused. Ellie's harsh words during family gatherings still echoed in my mind, but I had never told anyone, partly because I didn't want to cause trouble, partly because I was so used to being dismissed. But something in Ethan's eyes made it impossible for me to stay silent this time. You might want to brace yourself, I said slowly, because I don't think you really know who Ellie is. He opened his mouth to respond, but another voice cut in, soft yet strangely powerful. And if you're still unsure, then maybe your mother can help make things clear. We both turned. Celeste Bennett, Ethan's mother, stood at the end of the hallway, holding a phone, her eyes locked on her son. She was the kind of woman who made a room pause when she entered. Not because she was loud, but because her presence demanded attention. Today, she wore an elegant navy gown, her platinum hair in a sleek bun, and her eyes sharp enough to see through anything. She walked closer and handed the phone to Ethan. Look. Ethan took it, his finger swiping across the screen. First, a furrowed brow, then a stunned expression. I saw his hand tremble slightly as he scrolled. I couldn't see the messages, but his expression changed. From confusion to anger, then to something deeper, broken. Ethan's voice cracked. She told her best friend she was training me to be the perfect husband, said I was too predictable, and as long as she stayed sweet in front of you, this house would be hers. Celeste nodded. There are also messages to her stylist. Ellie said that a few months after the wedding, she'd find a way to make you dependent. And then, everything will be mine. That's a direct quote. I looked at Ethan. His face had gone pale, his shoulders tense, like he was bracing against an invisible weight. I can't believe this, he whispered. Mom, why do you have these messages? Celeste glanced at me, then answered. A friend of mine works at the studio Ellie hired her stylist from. They accidentally sent the backup file to my email when I rescheduled a fitting, and I read it. Ethan sank into a chair, still gripping the phone. The air around us felt frozen. I sat beside him, saying nothing. Part of me hurt for him, but another part knew this was the moment when buried truths finally came to light. Celeste stood there, silent for a few seconds, then said gently, Mary, thank you for not turning away. I gave a small nod. I didn't need thanks. I just wanted the truth, not to stay buried. And from here on out, I knew this wedding would no longer go the way they had planned, and Ellie would no longer control everything the way she thought she could. The air in the private conference room on the resort's second floor felt heavy. No one spoke when the door closed behind us. Only the hum of the AC and the faint breeze slipping through a slightly open window. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his eyes blank. Celeste stood behind him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder like the only anchor left. I sat slightly to the right, hands in my lap, trying to stay composed even though my heart pounded so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. The door opened again. Ellie walked in with my mother, Caroline. Mom looked confused, but Ellie didn't. She held on to her usual air of confidence, only now there was a flicker of caution in her eyes. And worry. "What's going on here?" Ellie asked, her voice slightly high-pitched as if she was trying to regain control. "Why are you all pulling people out of the wedding?" Ethan stood up, and the look in his eyes was no longer shock. It was a cold, clear resolve. He pulled a white envelope from the pocket of his suit jacket and placed it firmly on the table. "You know what this is?" Ellie stared at the envelope, saying nothing. "Petition to annul the marriage," he said, his voice unwavering. "And, in case you care, I've already signed it." The room fell silent. My mother gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Ellie stepped back, her lips pressed tightly together. "You are joking, right?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Celeste spoke up, her tone sharp as a blade. "We read all of your messages, Ellie. Every word you said about Ethan, about me, about this family. There's no denying any of it." I did." "Don't." Ethan cut her off, and for the first time, his voice carried both hurt and fury. "You called my mother a rich old woman who only knows how to write checks. You told your friend you'd have it all under control 6 months after the wedding. You called me too easy to manipulate. Just pretend to be fragile and you get anything you want." "Want me to quote more?" Ellie froze. I looked at my mom. She stood still, her face pale as if she was seeing her daughter's true self for the first time. "Those were jokes," Ellie said, her voice hoarse. "Messages between friends. Not serious." Celeste gave a short, bitter laugh. "And what about the divorce consultation you filed last month? Was that a joke, too?" That's when I saw my father, Robert, enter the room, his expression heavy. I didn't know who had called him, but his presence seemed to make the room sink deeper into tense silence. "Is this true?" he asked, looking straight at Ellie. Ellie didn't respond. Robert turned to my mother. "Did you know about this?" Mom shook her head weakly. I didn't think Ellie could do something like this." "You never think," he said slowly. "You've never looked at what's really going on." Then he turned toward me, and for the first time in many years, he didn't avoid my eyes. "Mary," he said, "I'm sorry." Both Mom and I were stunned. I had never heard him say sorry, especially not to me. "I've been silent for too long. Let everything veer off course," he went on. "And I know you were right about Ellie. About everything." I didn't know how to react. Part of me had grown so used to being overlooked that this recognition left me breathless. Ellie snapped out of it. "You're taking her side?" she shouted, voice rising. "Your daughter, the one you've always loved, is being turned on by her entire family over a few dumb texts?" Ethan gripped the edge of the table. "Don't call them dumb texts, Ellie. That's who you really are." "You don't understand," Ellie shouted, her voice trembling. "I love you. I just didn't want to lose the chance to build a stable life." "What's wrong with that?" Celeste raised an eyebrow. "Is that what love looks like? Planning a divorce before the wedding even starts?" "She's lying," Ellie spun toward me, her eyes burning. "This is all your fault. If you weren't so jealous, if you didn't poison Mom against me, today wouldn't be ruined." I took a deep breath, staying calm. "Ellie, you did this to yourself. Don't blame anyone else. You've always been the outsider in this family," Ellie screamed. "Always pretending to be the good one, just to make Mom feel guilty. What do you want? To steal everything from me?" "No," I said, my voice quiet but clear. "I just want the truth to be seen." My mother stepped forward then. She looked at Ellie for a long time, confused, hurt, and finally, broken. "Ellie, she said softly. I can't defend you anymore. Ellie stood frozen. Her lips moved like she wanted to say something, but no words could fix anything now. She turned toward me, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in her. Not fear of being caught. Fear because she realized no one was standing by her this time. Ellie stood there in the dead quiet room, breathing hard, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. The carefully applied makeup from the morning was now smudged around her eyes. The pristine white wedding gown that had wowed everyone just hours ago now looked tight, burdensome, stripped of the elegance she had imagined for her big day. She whipped her head toward me, her eyes darkening. You always wanted to take me down, Ellie hissed, her voice cracking. You never let me have one peaceful moment, did you? I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. But Ellie didn't need a reply. She charged toward me, eyes blazing, her footsteps echoing against the glossy tile floor. I didn't move. I wasn't afraid. And then, in that exact moment, a steady arm slid between us. It was Celeste. That's enough, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp as steel. Ellie froze, stunned. Get out of my way! You've caused enough chaos, Celeste replied firmly. If I let you do one more foolish thing, that would be on me. Ellie panted, eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. Or someone still on her side. But no one spoke. No one stepped forward. Ethan leaned against the table, expression unreadable. My father had his head bowed, brow furrowed like he'd just accepted a bitter truth. And my mother, the one who once excused every little mistake Ellie made, stood frozen, clutching her purse strap, eyes rimmed with red. Then, Ellie pushed past Celeste, heels clattering against the floor as she stormed out of the room, her long train sweeping behind her through the hallway. I thought she would vanish behind the door, but no. She shoved open the main doors leading back to the reception hall, where soft music still played, where hundreds of guests were laughing, clinking glasses, and posing for photos against a backdrop of pristine white flowers. And when Ellie appeared, breath ragged, hair disheveled, eyes wild, everything stopped. The music faded, heads turned, a murmur rose. Curious, stunned, then shocked. Stares. The rest of us from the conference room followed behind her. No one tried to stop her, no one wanted to. Ellie stood at the center of the reception hall. What was supposed to be the most beautiful moment of her life, now becoming the stage for the downfall of a self-crowned queen. You think you can humiliate me like this? Ellie screamed, her voice echoing through the rows of banquet tables and shimmering chandeliers. I gave everything for today. Months of planning, picking out every single detail, and now, over a few messages, a few meaningless words, you're going to destroy me? No one answered. Ethan stepped forward, his gaze steady and unblinking. No one destroyed you, Ellie. You did that yourself. She shook her head wildly, tears spilling down her cheeks. You love me, Ethan. I did everything for our future. Celeste stepped forward, slow but deliberate. She faced Ellie, her voice chillingly calm. I once hoped you'd be part of this family, but you never wanted to be a Bennett. You only wanted what we had. A quiet "oh" rippled through the crowd like a wave. People were beginning to understand. Some guests exchanged glances, a few set their glasses down, their eyes heavy with realization. Ellie glanced around, breath uneven. She made all of this up, she shouted, pointing directly at me. Mary's always been jealous of me, always trying to drag me down. She spent her whole life in the background, and now she wants to pull me down with her. I stepped forward, calm and steady, my voice just loud enough to be heard. I don't need to drag anyone down. The truth carries its own weight. Ellie went silent, The tension was tight as wire. All eyes were on her, even those who had once cheered her on, admired her, now just stood there, in silence. I turned to Ethan, clinging to a final shred of hope. You can't leave me. I'm your wife. We made vows. Ethan pulled the same white envelope from his jacket pocket, the one he'd come prepared with. He held it up in front of Ellie. "This is the annulment contract," he said slowly, his voice calm and cold. And I signed it. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Celeste gently placed a hand on her son's shoulder. "Let's go, Ethan." As they turned and walked away, Ellie stood alone, surrounded by chandeliers and glittering gowns. She had once been the center, the star, built on control and appearances. Now it had all crumbled, right in front of everyone. A week after Ellie's wedding, I woke up in my small Boston apartment. No wedding flowers, no distant violin music, no judgmental looks or whispered side comments. Just me and silence. My phone buzzed gently on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen. Mom. The 9th call in 3 days. I didn't answer. I'd heard enough in that conference room, in that reception hall, and throughout a lifetime of quiet endurance. I didn't need a half-hearted apology or a performative hug. I didn't need them to keep acting out a picture-perfect family just to save face. That afternoon, as I was making coffee, a text came through. From Mom. "I know you're angry. I can't change the past. But I want to see you. Have dinner with me? Just the two of us." I stared at the message for a long time. The old me, the me from a few years ago, would have said yes immediately. I would have picked out a nice dress, arrived on time, smiled politely, and tried to think of light conversation topics to keep the mood afloat. I would have hoped, however faintly, to hear her say, "I'm proud of you," or simply say my name with genuine warmth. But that girl didn't exist anymore. I put the phone down. No reply. No anger. Just no longer necessary. That evening, I walked along the Charles River, where small lights hung from the railings reflected across the still water. The crisp early autumn air carried the scent of the breeze and soft laughter from passing strangers. I sat on a stone bench and pulled out an old photo from my wallet, a family picture from Christmas when I was 16. Ellie was in the middle, wearing a bright red dress, grinning ear to ear. Mom sat beside her, hand resting proudly on Ellie's shoulder. Me? I stood off to the side, half hidden behind the Christmas tree. I stared at the photo for a long time, then gently folded it and tucked it back into my bag. I no longer needed to force myself into a frame I was never meant to fit in. Another call came through. This time it was my father, Robert. I picked up. Not because I wanted to, but because I knew he wouldn't call unless it mattered. "Mary," he said, his voice rougher and slower than usual. "I'm not good with words, you know that." I didn't answer. I just listened. "But that day, when you spoke, and your mother saw who Ellie really was, I think, for the first time in her life, she understood how alone you've been." A long pause followed. "Whether you forgive us or not, I just want you to know, I was wrong. And I know that doesn't fix anything, but I want you to know." I closed my eyes. No tears, no pain, just a quiet sense of peace. "Thank you, Dad," I said softly, "but I don't need an apology anymore. I just need freedom." That night, I went home, pulled out the family photo album from the shelf. I didn't burn it. I'll tear it up. I just placed it in a box, locked it, and set it on top of the wardrobe. An era had ended, and I didn't need to look back. The next morning, I booked a trip to Maine, a trip I'd always wanted to take but never let myself because of family gatherings or other invisible obligation. This time, I chose me. I didn't need their forgiveness. I didn't need their validation. And most importantly, I didn't need their love to feel worthy. Because now, I knew. My worth doesn't come from someone else's gaze. It comes from how I see myself. Family might be where we come from, but it's not always where we belong. Real family is made of those who respect you, listen to you, and don't make you fight just to be seen. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Not to run, but to find yourself. Mary's story is a powerful reminder that not everyone born under the same roof will give you the love and respect you deserve. Sometimes protecting yourself means letting go of the relationships you once thought were unbreakable. Growth doesn't always come from being accepted. It comes the moment you walk away without needing an apology. In real life, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's an act of courage and freedom. What did you think of Mary's story and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, real-life family stories. I used to believe that dedication would eventually be rewarded. Until the day I opened that old document folder. That afternoon, I stopped by my parents' house in Salem, Oregon, like I did every weekend. My mother, Denise, wasn't tech-savvy, so I often helped her check bills, organize tax papers, and scan important documents. That two-story red brick house, the one I had spent nearly a decade financially supporting and helping renovate tile by tile, felt like a second home to me. "Can you take a look at this for me?" she said, handing me a messy stack of papers before heading back to her orchids in the backyard. I sat down at the dining table, sifting through the pile, until my eyes landed on a thick, cream-colored envelope labeled in bold, "Estate Plan and Will." I hesitated. Not because I was curious, at least that's what I told myself, but because I wanted to make sure everything was in order. I'd always been the one to worry about things like this, the one who kept the family from falling apart. But as I flipped to the asset distribution page, I felt a tight pressure in my chest. Everything, and I mean everything my parents owned. The house, over $450,000, 0 cents in savings, the new SUV, even Mom's wedding ring was clearly stated to go to Samantha, my younger sister. And me? Not a word. Not a single mention beyond the vague line, "We love both our daughters." I clenched the paper, my knuckles turning white. Every memory of working 2 jobs to help pay their mortgage, of driving through snowstorms to deliver Mom's medication, of fixing plumbing, replacing shingles. Each of them felt like they had just been slapped out of existence by that cold, printed sentence. I heard my mom re-enter the house, her footsteps light behind me. "Hannah, did you find the statement?" I stood up, will in hand, and turned around. My voice was calm, unavailingly calm. "Mom, is this real?" She froze, her eyes glancing at the paper in my hand. "Oh, Hannah, what does that mean?" I cut her off, my throat tight but each word sharp. "A lifetime of caring for you and Dad, and I'm written off like I never existed?" My dad, Richard, walked in from the living room just then, coffee mug in hand. He set it down with a sigh, like he was about to comment on the weather. "You don't need to react like this, Hannah. You're doing fine. Samantha, she's still figuring things out." I let out a laugh, humorless and dry. "Figuring things out? She's 30. She changes jobs every 3 months, lives off you two, and can't pay her own phone bill. I'm the one who paid your mortgage for the last 3 years, the one who fixed the roof last winter, the one who's kept this house from falling apart dollar by dollar." My mom stepped forward, placing a hand over mine as if that could calm me. "Don't overthink it. I just wanted your sister to feel secure." I pulled my hand away, nodded slightly, my gaze ice cold. "Secure? And what about me? The only one who's kept this place standing all these years? They said nothing. I placed the will back on the table, like returning a declaration of war. Thanks for showing me where I really stand. I walked to the door without looking back. No one called out behind me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel hurt. I just felt empty. A quiet, hollow kind of emptiness that chilled me to the bone. I never returned to that house after discovering the will. 2 weeks passed in silence, no calls, no messages, like I had never existed in their world. I told myself if they had even a shred of conscience, they'd reach out. But instead of an apology or explanation, what I got was a message from Dad. Hannah, this month's mortgage is due. Can you transfer it soon? Deadline's Friday. I sat frozen, staring at the message in disbelief. Part of me almost laughed. No mention of what happened, no asking if I was okay. Just a demand like I was their default ATM. I typed back, every word like ice. I think Samantha can handle it. That house is hers now, right? Then I set my phone down and didn't wait for a reply. 10 minutes later, the screen lit up again. This time, it was Mom. Hannah, don't do this. We need to talk. I didn't answer. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry anymore. Just a kind of ruthless clarity had taken the place of every fragile hope I once held. For years, I believed my sacrifices would be acknowledged. I was wrong. And I had no interest in playing savior anymore. 3 days later, the next message came. From Samantha. You're overreacting. Mom and Dad didn't mean it like that. You've always been independent, and I'm just not. You know that. I typed slowly, each word cutting through my sister's fake mask. Then prove you deserve what you've been given. Start by paying the mortgage. No response. Another week passed in silence, until one Monday morning, while I was sipping coffee in my kitchen, my phone buzzed with a transfer request. Exactly $2,900.00 from my mom. No message. Just a cold withdrawal request, as emotionless as the way they'd written me out of everything. I hit decline without a second's hesitation. Minutes later, the phone rang. It was Mom. I let it ring to the 4th buzz, then declined the call. A message followed immediately. Hannah, I know you saw it. Why did you decline? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and replied, because it's no longer my responsibility. Ask Samantha. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had control. I wasn't the one scrambling to fix cracks I didn't create. I wasn't sacrificing my entire youth to patch up other people's failures. 3 days later, Samantha texted again. You're being so selfish. Didn't you always say family comes first? I reread that message over and over. Family? The family she was talking about was the same one that treated me like an outsider, like a walking wallet. I replied with one sentence. Family is about fairness and respect, not using someone until they're no longer useful. After that, there were no more messages. Silence settled over everything, but this time, it didn't feel lonely. It felt like relief, a release from a burden I'd carried for far too long. But deep down, I knew. This silence was only the beginning, because they'd be back. When no one else would help. When the house was at risk of foreclosure. When Samantha, with all that inheritance, still wouldn't know how to pay a bill on time. And when that moment came, I'd be ready. Not to save them, but to show them that I was no longer the one who would sacrifice without so much as a thank you. The next message from Samantha came near midnight while I was halfway through a historical novel and sipping hot tea. The phone lit up, and I didn't even need to open it to guess the tone. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I scrolled and kept reading. Everyone's already stressed out. Why are you choosing now to be dramatic? It's just a few payments. You've always done it. A dry laugh slipped from my lips, without any humor at all. Just a few payments. Easy to say when you've never paid a utility bill in your life. I typed back. I'm not being dramatic, I'm being clear, and you better get used to it. Less than a minute later, she replied, You're seriously selfish. Don't be surprised if Mom and Dad don't forgive you. I set the phone down. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I wasn't haunted by what if they're upset, or obsessed with being the good daughter. I had crossed the line between being exploited and standing up for myself. The next day, I called the bank and requested my name be removed from the joint account used for the mortgage. I also contacted the utility companies and canceled all the auto payments I'd been secretly handling for years. I deleted the bill reminders on my phone, like a small ceremony marking the end of my role in their household. That night, I cleaned up my tiny apartment, played my favorite playlist, and bought myself a chocolate cake I'd always loved but never bought, because the money always had to go toward more important things. I started sleeping soundly. I woke up without the jolt of a payment notification. I went to work without feeling like I was dragging 3 other adults on my back. I even signed up for an online art class, something I dreamed about for years but always pushed aside because I didn't have time or really wasn't allowed to be selfish. And as my life started to breathe on its own again, the knocks from the past came louder. Early the following week, my mom, Denise, called. I didn't answer. A message came right after. Hannah, we need to talk. Your sister doesn't know how to pay the internet bill. Can you help? I didn't respond. 2 days later, another one. The landline got cut. She says she can't log in. I don't know what to do. I read the message, then opened the bookshelf and pulled out the old notebook, where I'd once written down every password, billing schedule, and customer service number. Every time my parents didn't know what to do, they called me. Every time Samantha forgot a payment, I handled it. This time, I closed the notebook and put it back. I wasn't their assistant. I wasn't the backbone of a system that erased me the second I stopped being useful. 3 days later, another message from Samantha landed in my inbox. Are you kidding me right now? The power's about to be shut off. Are you really going to let that happen to our family? I replied with just one sentence. No, I'm just letting everyone take responsibility for their own choices. Silence. I didn't hear anything for several more days. Until one morning, a call came from an unexpected number. Mrs. Lorraine, the neighbor who'd lived next to my parents for the last 20 years. Your mom asked if I knew anyone selling houses. I think they're not managing well anymore. I thanked her, then hung up. I didn't feel smug. I didn't smile, but I didn't cry either. I just sat by the window, watching sunlight spill through the trees out front, and realized something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't being crushed by duty or guilt. I had chosen to step out of the cycle, and I wasn't going back. The first message came on Monday morning, from someone I didn't expect. Mr. Walter, the neighbor who'd lived next door to my parents for over 20 years. Hannah, are your parents okay? Denise asked what day it was. She thought she got the date wrong, but she just got a letter from the bank. It clearly says, Notice of Foreclosure. I stared at the screen. So it had happened. Faster than I expected. 4 weeks since I stopped all support. 4 weeks for the house I once kept from falling apart to finally start collapsing. An hour later, my mom called. I didn't answer. A message followed right after the ring. Hannah, please. We really need you right now. It's serious. I read it, then set the phone down like it had nothing to do with me. But in truth, my chest still felt heavy. I had once thought this moment would bring some twisted sense of satisfaction, but it didn't. only a hollow, aching fatigue. Maybe because I was too used to cleaning up after others. I didn't reply. 2 days later, for the first time in weeks, Samantha showed up at my door. She stood there in a wrinkled hoodie, no makeup, clutching a messy stack of documents. Her eyes gave away the panic. "I just need 5 minutes," she said, breathless. "Just 5 minutes, Hannah." I crossed my arms, blocking the doorway, not a single ounce of sympathy in my eyes. "You here to ask for money?" "Not money," she blurted out, her voice shaky. I need your help talking to the bank. I don't understand the terms they're using. I'm overwhelmed." "What about the inheritance you got?" I asked, my tone as casual as commenting on the weather. She looked down and mumbled, "It's tied up in an investment portfolio. If I withdraw now, there's a penalty." I didn't think it would spiral this fast. I raised an eyebrow. "Yet you signed for everything without hesitation." "I thought Mom and Dad had it under control. They said it was all set." "I didn't think—" "Exactly. You didn't think. Like, always." Samantha fell silent. I stepped out and pulled the door closed behind me. This is the lesson you need to learn. Everyone stumbles, but no one grows if someone's always there to catch them. You're really going to let them lose the house? I'm not letting anything happen. They made their choice, now they live with it. I turned away, leaving Samantha standing alone in the building's hallway. 3 days later, I ran into Ben, an old classmate turned real estate agent, at a networking event at the local arts center. I was just about to tell him about the photo project I'd been working on when he interrupted, eyes wide. "Hey, is your parents' house on Vine Street?" I nodded. "Someone on my team mentioned them. Sounds like they're urgently looking to sell. Old house, needs work, high foreclosure risk. Are you doing okay?" I gave a faint smile. "I'm fine." "I guess they're not." Ben looked like he wanted to say more but decided against it. That night, I opened my laptop and spotted an email from a legal aid organization I volunteered with back in college. They were recruiting mentors for a new program, helping seniors manage housing debt. I smiled softly. Life had a strange way of circling back. I sat quietly for a long moment before starting the application. Not for my parents. Not for Samantha. For me. The one who had finally learned to let go. I didn't need to save the old house anymore. But if I could use what I'd been through to keep someone else from falling into that same cycle, that would be worth it. Saturday afternoon, I had just wrapped up a photography workshop and returned to my quiet little apartment, expecting nothing more than a hot cup of tea and a peaceful evening. But as I pulled into the parking lot, I saw a familiar silver minivan parked near the gate. 4 years ago, I had co-signed for that van when my dad, Richard, could no longer make the payments. I'd transferred the title to him last year as a final gesture of trust. Now it sat there like a bitter reminder. I got out of my car, walking slowly. My parents stood waiting near the building entrance. Samantha stood a bit behind, clutching her purse, eyes full of barely concealed worry. I said nothing. I stopped a few steps away, arms crossed, waiting. My mother, Denise, spoke first. Her voice was trembling. "Hannah, I'm sorry we had to come here, but things have gotten out of hand. The bank's coming to reassess the property next week." My father continued, his voice lower and wearier than I'd ever heard. "We made a mistake, I know that, but if the house is taken, your mother won't be able to handle it." I looked straight at him, my gaze colder than it had ever been. "Then why, when writing the will, did you decide I wasn't worth including?" He dropped his eyes, fingers fidgeting with the edge of his coat. "Back then, we thought you'd be fine. You've always been strong." "But Samantha?" "But Samantha," I interrupted, "gets to fail, gets forgiven, and inherits everything." I turned to face my sister. She pressed her lips together, said nothing. No denial, no excuse. I gave away my youth, I said, my voice quiet but every word sharp, without conditions. And in return I got disregard, and the assumption that Hannah will take care of it. I'm not in that role anymore. My mother's tears fell. We didn't know it would come to this. Can't you help? Just a little, just for a few months until things stabilize. I shook my head, a breeze in my chest sweeping away years of obligation. I'm not saying no because I can't help. I'm saying no because if I do, everyone will go right back to believing they never need to change. Samantha finally spoke, her voice small and broken. I didn't realize it would get so complicated. I thought it just needed time. I didn't think you'd walk away so fast. I looked at her. For the first time in weeks. I didn't walk away fast, I warned. I waited. I hoped. But our family chose to ignore all of it. So, this is really the end? My mom whispered, tears still fresh on her cheeks. I looked at her. The woman who once rocked me to sleep, who I'd brought medicine to, taken to the ER, cooked for after my dad retired. And I saw, clearer than ever, the line between blood and actual love. I didn't end this, I said. It ended the moment you decided who deserved to be named and who didn't. No one said a word. The late autumn wind whistled through the bare trees, carrying with it a chill that no jacket could warm. I stepped up onto the porch, pulled out my keys, and unlocked the door. Before walking inside, I turned back one last time. I hope you find a way, but I'm no longer the lifeline for this family. I looked at Samantha and spoke slowly. If you truly want to grow up, this is your chance. I've stepped off the merry-go-round. Now it's your turn. I walked in and shut the door behind me. The sound of the wind in the hallway drowned out their footsteps as they left. I stood quietly in my living room, afternoon sunlight casting a long beam across the floor through the glass. No tears, no heartbreak, just a silence, peaceful. I thought that after that final confrontation, they'd go quiet. I had hoped the truth would make them reflect and quietly step back out of pride. But I overestimated the self-awareness of people who've always lived off others. A week later, I got a message from Olivia, a close coworker at the art center. Hannah, are you on Facebook? You should check your mom's page. She's posting some unbelievable stuff. My hand trembled slightly as I typed Denise Baker into the search bar. Her timeline was filled with emotional posts, flower photos, and inspirational quotes, but what made me freeze was one standout post, with a picture of our old house attached. It's heartbreaking when your own daughter turns her back on family, abandoning sick and aging parents, refusing to help in our time of need. After everything we sacrificed for her. Over 80 shares. The comments were full of sympathy, comfort, and judgment for the ungrateful child. I bit my lip, scrolling further, and saw another post. This one from my dad, Richard. We thought Hannah was someone who loved her family, but when we needed her the most, she walked away without a word. The house is about to be taken, and she acts like nothing's happening. Then came a post from Samantha, with a clearly mocking tone. Some people are only kind when they're above you, looking down. But when family asks them to step down and help, they choose silence. That's today's version of strong, I guess. I gripped my phone tighter. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even shocked. I was tired. When guilt didn't work on me anymore, they turned to public shaming. But they forgot one thing. I wasn't silent anymore. That night, I opened my laptop and logged into my Facebook, which I rarely used. I made a single post. No background color, no fancy design. But every word was clear as daylight. My family is sharing a one-sided story, so, to be fair, here's the truth from my side. I attached a photo of the will, with Samantha's name as the sole beneficiary. I posted snapshots of the mortgage payments, utility bills, insurance, all under my name. Then I included the last text I got from my mom, asking for $2,900.00 to save the house. I ended with one line. My silence wasn't consent. I was just waiting for the right moment to tell the truth. That moment is now. Within 10 minutes, the first comment appeared. Hannah, you seriously did all of this? I can't believe it. An old friend commented. You're one of the kindest people I know. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. Then, one by one, people started sharing the post. Some who had known my parents chimed in, many expressing surprise. I always thought Samantha lived pretty recklessly. Now it makes sense. No one should be taken advantage of like that, especially not by their own family. My post spread quickly, not because it was sensational, but because it was real. It was honest, and it didn't shy away. 2 days later, my mom took down all her posts. My dad deactivated his account. Samantha changed her profile picture to a black and white flower. The vague, dramatic move she always made when things slipped out of her control. I didn't respond. I didn't post anything else. I just sat in my apartment, listening to the rain tap softly on the window, and for the first time, felt justice on my side. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need them to bow their heads. I just needed them to stop. And it seemed, finally, they understood that I wasn't someone they could manipulate anymore. One post, enough to end the years I'd been forced into silence. And now, I was writing the next chapter not on social media but in real life. Since that day I posted, I haven't heard a word from Mom, Dad, or Samantha. Everything has been as still as a forgotten lake after a storm. But not the silence of waiting. This was the silence of acceptance. They had lost the only person who always came back after they broke everything. I was the opposite. I began to live. Every Monday morning, I headed to the art center to teach my first photography class for high school students. The way their eyes lit up holding a camera for the first time, the way they viewed the world through a lens. It reminded me that not everyone sees the same thing, and sometimes you have to choose your own angle. In the evenings, I took a part-time video editing course, a skill I'd always dreamed of learning but put off because my family needed me. Now no one needs me. And for the first time in my life, that felt freeing. I started going on evening walks, unhurried and carefree. I baked on weekends, posted pictures on Instagram without worrying about being called fake. I made new friends in class, people who didn't know me as the one who held the family together. And because of that, I finally got to just be me. While I was learning how to breathe, across town, the house at 218 Elm Street began popping up on real estate listings. A friend of mine, Marcus, now a realtor, texted me, Hannah, your parents' house is up for sale. Asking $390,000, 0 cents, but no offers. Looks like they couldn't fix the roof or the faulty wiring. I wasn't surprised. No one to fix the fuse box at midnight, no one to replace the water heater or call the repair guy in time. No more me. That house had survived because of me. And now it reflected the truth. Neglected, run down, and with no one left who could keep it standing. I heard one more update from Lorraine, the elderly neighbor. She called just to check in, but before hanging up, she mentioned casually, Oh, and it seems like Samantha's moved back in with your parents. I see her doing the grocery runs often. She doesn't look too happy. I looked up from my laptop and took a sip of my still warm coffee. In the past, hearing something like that would have made my chest tighten with worry. But now, I simply shrugged. Maybe what Samantha needed most was to experience the instability she used to so easily ignore. I wasn't glad they were struggling. I just no longer wanted to carry the weight of choices that weren't mine. For the first time in 10 years, my savings account was steadily growing. I booked a fall trip to Seattle to photograph the changing leaves. I put a deposit down on a new semi-pro camera, something I used to consider an unnecessary luxury. I was learning to take care of myself the way I once cared for an entire family. I also started writing again. Not defensive posts, but a blog about breaking away from toxic family dynamics. Some entries were widely shared. Many people messaged me, thanking me for saying what they never had the words to express. And on a rainy afternoon, while I was editing photos in my favorite cafe, my phone buzzed with a notification from a real estate site. Price dropped by $30,000, 0 cents on property at 218 Elm. Owner seeking urgent sale. I looked at the photo of the house. Dark roof tiles, rotting fence, peeling window frames. It used to symbolize duty, pressure, and expectation. Now it was just a house, waiting to be rescued. And I wasn't the rescuer anymore. I tapped hide notification, closed my phone, and smiled. A soft smile, lighter than air, but deeper than any sigh I'd swallowed over the years. I didn't belong there anymore. One early winter afternoon, I was walking around Liberty Lake with my new camera. The golden light of dusk cut through bare branches, casting soft beams across the water. I stopped, raised my camera, and captured the perfect frame. A little boy running in the distance, his mother behind him, laughing and calling out. In that moment, I realized some things aren't meant to be held onto, because they were never truly yours to begin with. I used to believe family was something you could never lose, that blood was an unbreakable bond. But now, I know. The thing that makes a family real isn't DNA, it's respect. And gratitude. I had given everything in hopes of being seen, and in return I became the name left off a will, the one called dramatic for refusing to carry others' burdens any longer. I wasn't angry anymore, not really. I had just let go. They still lived there, in that old house, now listed for the 3rd time. Word was, whenever someone came to view it, Samantha tried to act like a responsible homeowner, but when asked about maintenance records or repair bills, she'd just smile awkwardly. Because all those years, no one ever taught her what to do. I never went back, not once. My mother once sent me a handwritten letter, sealed in a familiar blue envelope with handwriting I knew by heart. She wrote about her sleepless nights, not knowing where to begin again. That your father isn't as strong as he used to be. At the end, she wrote, I don't know how much time we have left to fix things, but if you're willing, I'm still here. I folded the letter. I didn't tear it. I didn't reply. I placed it in the drawer beneath my desk, next to undeveloped photos and half-finished drafts. Things that needed time to be understood and accepted. I didn't hate them. I just no longer had the strength to keep sacrificing without being heard. I kept working, kept teaching, kept creating and capturing. I even held a small photo exhibit at a friend's cafe, showcasing images that traced my journey to healing. Early mornings in the park, golden light on quiet streets, an elderly woman's thin hands holding a warm mug, a single flower fallen on cracked pavement. A middle-aged woman came up to me afterward, shook my hand, and said, I don't know why, but every photo of yours feels like it's speaking for someone who's been silent for a long time. I smiled, saying nothing, because she was right. I had spent my life staying quiet, for peace, for the role of the good daughter, for the hope that enough giving would earn me the love I longed for. But now, I've chosen a different kind of peace. Not one that comes from others' approval, but from finally choosing myself. I've learned how to love myself, unconditionally. I've learned to say no, without guilt. I've learned to let others face the consequences of their own choices. And most importantly, I've learned not to look back. They're still my family, on paper, in memory, but they're no longer at the center of my every decision. I don't know what the future holds, whether there'll be a reunion or if things will remain as they are, but that doesn't matter anymore. Because in the end, I finally understand. Family isn't just the people who share your last name. Family is the people who value your presence. The ones who don't treat your kindness like a duty. The ones who make you feel seen and chosen. And if none of them can do that, that's okay. Because I have a family meet, and I don't need to look anywhere else. My story isn't a tragedy. It's an awakening. I once believed that love and sacrifice would always be rewarded, that family was unshakable. But the truth is, no one deserves to be taken for granted, not even by their own blood. I've learned to set boundaries, to walk away when necessary, and to choose myself without regret. Now I live with lightness, freedom, and peace, not because they changed, but because I changed myself. What do you think about Hannah's decision? Was she too harsh, or was this the only way to truly protect herself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about real family life.